Big welcome to the Telarus partner community. We're here in Studio 19 at Telarus headquarters. I will be your host for today's executive track. Rich Goetz, General Counsel for Telarus. Today we'll be talking about estate planning and some of the issues that arise. My little legal disclaimer here is that I am not your lawyer. Hopefully these issues will get your wheels turning on some things, questions to ask your legal counsel as you put some of these things in place. Please don't go out and rely on these representations as your own legal counsel. So with that, we'll cover a couple things today. First, we'll talk about business planning, then we'll talk about asset protection, and then lastly, we'll talk about estate planning. Now, as a business owner, you need to realize that your business and your estate planning are connected. They have to be connected and they have to work together. With asset protection, what we'll be talking about is keeping what you earn and protecting what you've put together for your career. And then lastly, estate planning is figure out what happens when you're gone. So once you move on, what happens next? Okay, so first, the business planning side. So we have to understand as business owners, your business plan and your estate plan have to be in sync. For example, if you put in your operating agreement that if you die, something happens and it contradicts your will, you're just setting yourself up for problems. So those documents and those plans have to be in sync. The other thing to start thinking about is what is actually in writing. We'll talk about that a lot today, about what's in writing and what is actually enforceable. And don't put off starting to think about these things until something bad happens. A lot of times we don't anticipate the types of things that can happen, and it puts us in a bind later. So don't put it off, do it now. Second thing is the operating agreement. This is the controlling document for your company. This is going to be a little bit different whether you're in business for yourself or with yourself only, if you have a business partner, if you have multiple partners. This is an important document. And in looking at that operating agreement, do you contemplate whether this is, or what happens to you or what happens to the business if you die or if you're incapacitated? For example, my dad had a brain tumor earlier this year. Operation was 2 weeks after his diagnosis. He's now since made a full recovery, but during that period of time, he wasn't dead, but there was no way he could make any type of business or financial or any other types of decisions. And so luckily we had documents in place that dictated who was making those decisions while he was incapacitated, or those things that you've thought through, that if something were to happen to you in your business, who's making those decisions. So do you give your spouse control? Upon your death, do you appoint your estate to control those things? And then in your estate plan, to go to number 3 on your succession plan, what happens when you do die? Have you made those arrangements? Have you thought through the things that you want to have happen once you're gone? One of the big ones, just a quick plug, will be Telarus account management. That's been a really popular thing for those people who are getting closer to retiring, that are starting to look past what they're doing in their career, and they start saying, I don't want to manage this account base forever. I want someone else to do that for me. And so if that's something that you're interested in, talk to your SPDM and they can walk you through some of the details of how that program is set up. So one other thing really quick. There's 2 ways to pass control or pass property, 2 main ways, and that's to either pass it by contract or pass it by will. Now, if your documents align and if they mesh together and they're synchronized, then you'll have them the same in both and they'll be consistent. But what you don't want to have happen is have your operating agreement silent on that and then have your estate planning documents, your will or your trust, nominate a person and then get stuck in probate court because someone's challenging the will. So those are things that you need to think through as far as making sure that those documents sync up. Okay, as far as asset protection, a couple things as a business owner. A lot of you have either signed these or been asked to sign these, but the first one on asset protection is stay away from personal guarantees if you can in any way avoid them. If there are other assets that you can do that you can leverage or to offer up as collateral, do it. Personal guarantees are something you definitely want to stay away from. Those are things that can put your home at risk, or your other personal assets, and you don't want to mix that if you can at all avoid that. The other thing is when it comes to asset protection, you have to have a formal entity. I'm guessing most of you do. If you don't have an LLC or an S Corp or a corporation, some other type of formal entity, that should be the first thing that you do, is to protect those assets. The other thing is, it's not enough just to have an LLC or an S Corp, but one of the things that you have to do is you have to treat it like a separate entity. So you can't commingle funds, you can't pay your mortgage out of your bank account, your business bank account. Those things start to mix those assets of personal and business, and then that allows people, if you create a problem, they can go after your company assets and your personal assets because you're treating them one and the same, and there's a legal mechanism for them to do that. So don't commingle your funds. Make sure you're keeping clean books and clean records, and recognizing the formalities of the entity. It's super important for state or for asset protection. And the last one is commission protection. So residual commission is a huge deal, and that's why you're in this business, is you create that residual income. But you've got to protect it. So a big part of that is make sure that if you've got any direct relationships, when was the last time you looked at those contracts? Do they protect your income? Do you have evergreen clauses that protect you after a termination for convenience? There have been suppliers that just kind of say, well, we're done, we're not going to pay you anymore. And a lot of smaller direct partnerships have been left out to dry on that. So make sure that you're protected in those agreements. The other thing is, let Telarus protect those agreements, or protect your commissions through those agreements as Telarus negotiates all of those, and we have the bargaining power with all of our agent community that we get more favorable terms than others. So make sure that that those commissions are protected. So the third thing that we're going to talk about, the last thing, is the estate planning piece. So what I would recommend is pass by contract whenever possible. It's the most efficient way. The easiest way to explain what that means is, like in a life insurance policy, you're passing it by contract because you're in that document appointing a beneficiary. That beneficiary is going to be paid those funds upon the event in the contract happening, which in life insurance policy would be upon your death. That is being passed by contract. No one has to see what happens in the will, or if there's a will contest, or if it goes to probate. Those funds are already being paid because they're being passed by contract, not by will. So I would recommend making sure that you, in your operating agreement, set out kind of your succession plan. In the case of my incapacitation or death, then so-and-so will make those decisions for me. And then in your will, you'll nominate an executor who will handle all of your business affairs. Okay, so, but make sure that you're passing by contract wherever possible. The other thing is consult a lawyer. This is not something that you want to try to save some money on by going to LegalZoom or doing it on your own. Just bite the bullet, consult a lawyer who knows what they're talking about in this area, and come up with a comprehensive plan that they can look at what's in writing, what do your documents say, and what do we need to fill in the gaps maybe in your current plan. And then the last thing is, if you have a business, you should have an operating agreement. If you are alive, you should have a will, especially if you've got minor children. But when you're talking about your business, make sure that you've got something in writing in the form of a will, trust, those types of documents that will dictate where those assets go in the event that you're no longer with us. One of the big things that we just added to our partner agreement is Telarus will honor your estate planning documents. So if you die, we will continue to pay your residual commission to your estate or wherever your documents dictate. So if you want it to go to a surviving spouse, we'll do that. If you want it to go to children, we'll do that, as long as we know where we're supposed to send the money those residual commissions will continue to be paid out even after your death. So those are just a few fundamentals on estate planning. I appreciate your time today, and we will see you around.